I'm Kat and I play red. We're still not travelling here, so we're continuing to explore new and exciting places through board games. So last week we had a look at Bruges. There's a couple of other cities coming up that I've got in mind, but this week we're going somewhere completely new and exciting. This was one of our favourite games from the last couple of years. Ooh, Underwater Cities. So today we're going to submerge and have a look at building a new civilization underwater. Underwater Cities is played over 10 rounds. You'll start the game with 3 cards in hand, and each round you'll get to take 3 actions, hopefully using the cards. So if we have a look on the board, we have a round marker. So we'll play the first 4 rounds, then there'll be a scoring and production round, then we play 3 more rounds, another scoring and production, and then at the end of round 10 we'll do scoring and production followed by endgame scoring, as represented by the little clock symbol. These symbols are worth noting as they will come up on the cards. So to take an action, you'll choose one of the cards, it helps if I have them the right way up, one of the cards in your hand, and I'm going to place one of my action tokens on this red space here. This red space will give me 2 steel plast and 1 kelp, but I'm also going to play this red card here. So placing this worker here will get me 2 credits, not 10, that would be nice, 2 steel plast and 1 kelp, which come over and just sit in front of me for the time being. Now, if I wanted this action but didn't have a red card, I could play a different card. However, in this case, I would only get to do the action on the board and this card would be discarded. So it's very wasteful to do that. There are times in the game you will end up having to do that, and there are also cards that mitigate that effect. But for now, this is what I'm doing. So I'm going to discard that card, and then at the end of my turn I will draw another card. Play continues in order with each player taking 1 action until all their player pieces are gone. So let's just put these down for example, and then at the end of the round the marker will move up, everyone will take their markers back, and the next round will begin. So let's have a look at the board. As well as the placement slots around the edge, there's quite a lot going on in the middle here. So these 3 cards were randomly picked at the start of the game. These are essentially missions that can be completed by a player. So if I was first player to get 6 tunnels, I'd get this bonus, and that would flip over because it's no longer available to the other players. Same principle with these. Then this is the Federation track, which determines player order. Currently black goes first with orange in second place. This is actually the 1 or 2 player side of the board, so on the reverse it's 3-4 player, and obviously there are more spaces available. Whenever you see the symbol here, you get to move up this track. So when I placed my marker on this spot, I would have gone up 2 spaces here, which takes me here and gives me 1 credit. However, if I were to then go up another 2 spot, I'd actually get all the bonuses shown. So in this case I'd get a steel plast as well as the point. This would mean I would be going first into the next round. So keep an eye on what's going on here. This here is essentially a free-for-all spot that anyone can go on. You can discard a card in order to take 2 new cards as well as 2 credits. This is actually one of the easiest ways to get money outside of the production phase of the game, but it's a tough call. Then the rest of the board here are the special cards. When you see the S symbol, as shown on the bottom here, or on the back of these cards, you can choose to take one of these cards into your hand. These are the level 1 and 2 special cards, and then here are the 6 available level 3 special cards. You take one of these into your hand like any card. However, when you play it, you must pay the cost in credits as shown on the side of the card here. These level 3 special cards all reward bonus points at the end of the game. See the little clock at the top that I mentioned earlier? So while these are very handy, they're not necessarily great to have in your hand early in the game. Plus, of course, you must have the money to pay the cost when you play them, and money can be very tight in this game. To better understand the worker placement slots around the board, we really need to have a look at the player board. So let's move to that. So each player begins with a player board set up like this. You start with one city already on the right hand side, bottom of the board, and these 3 metropolis which are drawn at random at the start of the game. So each city has space for 3 buildings around the outside. Some have these extra expansion slots. Fancy. Here is space for tunnels. You can buy tunnels in this game which will connect one city to the next city and ensure that everything produces. If there are images here where you place components, you'll get that bonus. So if I'd placed my tunnel here instead of here, I would have got a steel plast. If I place a tunnel here, I get a kelp, and so on. So let's pretend we've got this far in round 1. Fat chance. These slots here are for buildings. Buildings come in 3 different types in this game, all of which produce different resources during the production phase. So we have white, green and yellow buildings. To be posh, they're desalination plants, farms and laboratories. So you can build these next to your city. Here. Then during the production phase, they will produce according to this handy little player aid we have here. The cost of everything is shown here, and then what they produce during the production phase is shown across here. So a farm will cost you 1 kelp to build. However, during production it will produce a kelp. If you're lucky enough to have doubled up your farm, like so, you'll get a kelp and a point. If you're really going for it and you happen to have 2 double farms on the same city, you'll get 3 kelp and 3 points. This chart shows you the same for the 3 different building types. Now, tunnels are good to connect your cities and help build your metropolis, but again, they will also produce. A standard tunnel will give you 1 credit. An upgraded tunnel will give you a credit and a point. A city will produce nothing at the end of the round. A symbiotic city, however, will give you 2 points. But beware. During the production phase, every city will cost you a kelp to maintain. Alternatively, you can pay a biomatter or 3 points. So let's have a look at how we would build up. So now we've looked at the player boards, let's have a look at the action spots that are available on the main board, starting with the greens. So on this spot you can draw 2 cards, then you can use a science to upgrade either a building or a tunnel, or take a kelp. So you'll always get the 2 cards. You need to choose between one of these 2 actions. When you do have extra cards in your hand, you must always discard down to 3 at the start of your next turn, but you can have an unlimited number in your hand in the meantime. Here, as we mentioned earlier, would move you 2 spots up the Federation track. This spot here, nice and simple, build a city. It can be a normal city or a symbiotic city. Though the costs are different, they're shown on your guide sheet. Here is build 2 desalination plants. The cost for those is credits, 1 credit each, so if you were to build the 2, you'd pay 2 credits and pop them onto your player board. Then, moving on to red, this is where you get to take the special cards that we spoke about earlier. Here is just taking these resources, so 2 steel plast and a kelp. This is to place a tunnel and to use an action card. At the start of the game, all players will begin with an action card. See the little A in the top corner? And during the course of the game, you will draw more that will give you more action cards. So this one, I can take a steel plast or a credit. Once I've used this card, it taps and it is unavailable until the end of the production phase. So use these wisely. Here we can place 2 farms or 2 laboratories, again paying the cost as shown on the player sheet. Moving over to yellow, again the option to build a city, but this time it comes with the bonus of being able to build either a farm, a desalination plant or a laboratory. This space has an either or option. You can either take 2 science or you can pay up to 3 science to upgrade up to 3 existing structures. Here, build 2 tunnels. And finally, here, take an action card and 2 resources of your choice from science, steel plast or kelp, but they mustn't be the same 2 resources. After each player has taken 3 actions, change the turn order according to the Federation track. In this case, it would stay the same. These markers move down to the bottom. And then at the end of the round, don't forget to move the round marker up 1. Now, normally, you just go into the next round, perform 3 actions, jobs are good. However, if we move on to one of these spaces with the cogs, that's when we do production. Let's say this is my board going into the first production round. So these 2 tunnels here would both get me a credit each. However, this one's upgraded, so it would also get me 1 point. Then the buildings. So my laboratory here would get me 1 science. Because my farm here is doubled up, I would get 1 kelp and also 1 point. My desalination plant here would get me a credit. The next city here isn't as built up, but it's connected, so I would still get 1 kelp for the farm and 1 coin for the desalination plant. Also, make sure you check any cards you might have lurking around. This one here, during the production phase, will get me an extra science point. Also, if you've connected to any of the metropolises, there are potential bonuses to be had there. This one here is an instant bonus, so doesn't give me anything. However, this one down at the bottom here gives me an instant bonus, but it would also give me 2 points during the production phase if it was connected to the rest of my buildings. After production and scoring happens, the other thing is the cards get taken away. If you notice, these all had a 1 on the back. These now leave the game and the level 2 cards come into play. At the very beginning, each player will draw 3 cards from the level 2 deck, which means in total you'll have 6 cards in hand, 3 level 1s and 3 level 2s. As I said, this will happen at various points in the game. So now I need to have a look at these and decide which cards I need to take going into the next round. So let's take those. You can have a combination of level 1 and 2s, and I'm then going to discard the other cards that I don't want. Bearing in mind a big part of this game is the card play, let's have a look at some examples of cards. These are the ones that I've kept going into the next round. So this card has an effect that's always in play, hence the infinity symbol. This actually allows me to have 4 cards in hand rather than the usual 3 cards. This card is an immediate action, as shown by the lightning bolt here. That means I'd play it and immediately put it on the discard pile. This means I can immediately pay for and place a farm or a desalination plant on one of the expansion slots of one of my cities. So these are marked with the blue, so pay 1 credit and pop that there. Then this card would be discarded. The other card I have in my hand is an action card. Remember, we spoke about them earlier. You'll get to play them a total of 3 times if you're lucky during the course of a game. This one means I can use it, and if I have a double desalination plant attached to my metropolis, I'll get 1 coin and 1 biomatter. Obviously, with decks of cards this big for each of the 3 eras, it's impossible to explain what all the cards in this game do. But you'll see patterns emerge as you play the game, and you'll find your own really neat little combinations that you may or may not get to pull off, depending on if you draw the right card. Sometimes you just have to make the best of what you draw. After the first production phase and the cards have been changed, we then move on to Era 2 and play continues as before, with each player taking 3 turns, 3 turns, 3 turns. Then we get to the second production phase. Again, the cards are swapped out, the level 3 cards are brought into play, players take 3 of them, choose which cards they want to keep, and again we play as normally for the next 3 rounds. Then we have a standard production round as before. So you produce and score exactly the same way as you have done the previous 2 production phases. Then we move on to endgame scoring. Each player will have a handy card that shows them all the endgame scoring. So the first thing to look at is the metropolis on your board. I didn't actually manage to connect to mine, but in this case, if I'd got 4 upgraded components, buildings or tunnels, that weren't the same, it would have given me 4 points. But I didn't, so I don't gain any points for that. Next, we move on to any cards with an endgame bonus. I have this one here. So this enables me to trade steel plast for points, up to a maximum of 14. Now, I only have 3 in my supply, but I'll pay 3 to gain 3 points, and that's my card done. Next, we go on to scoring the actual cities in your tableau. Each city that has a tunnel connected is worth 2 points. However, you'll get bonus points if they have buildings connected. So, here, if I have buildings of 1 type connected, it will get me 3 points, which would be the case here with my symbiotic city. Although I have 3 buildings, they're all the same. So this would get me 3 points. This city here has 2 different types of buildings attached, so would get me 4 points. These bottom 2 have all 3 different types of buildings attached, so they'd be worth 6 points each. Then any extra resources you have left over, you're going to trade in for cash. So I have 1, 2, 3, 5 resources. So I trade them in to get my 5 credits. Any biomatter you have is worth 2 coins. Sadly, I don't have any. But now I can trade my money in for points. So it's 4 credits is 1 point. So I have 5, 6, 7, 8 and another 4. So that would get me 3 points. The player with the most points is the winner. Underwater Cities was released at Essen 2018. We were a bit late to the party, so we didn't pick it up until the middle of last year, but it's had a lot of plays from us. Because there are so many cards, you're constantly changing your strategy and working just with what you've got. Obviously, as with all worker placement games, if someone's in the spot you want, you have to reevaluate and work around that. So there's no defining strategy that will help you to win this game, other than getting lots of resources and lots of points, obviously. The version we've been looking at is pimped to the nines. The little submarines we have, these are a 3D print. In the base game you actually get little cardboard things that you put, but we have little submarines. I even have a set in red that was made for me. And then also we've been using the Geek Up bits available from the Board Game Geek website, just because they're so much nicer than cardboard pieces. They feel good and they have a great sound to them. The player boards as well, these are from the expansion, which I haven't really touched on here, but the expansion gave you more cards, it gave you the museum board, and it gave us these fantastic triple layered inset boards, which for me are a must have. The main player boards are really flimsy, they're this sort of fabric, which aren't nice. I wish they were better. This really takes the game up a notch. I mean, that shows you how much we love this game, the fact that we have all this extra stuff for it. Obviously, with the amount of cards you have, play is different every time. The mission cards and the special cards are also different every time, so you never kind of know what you're going to get with this game. It's brilliant. So this is the base game, Rio Grande Games Delicious Games. The expansion is called New Discoveries. As I said, that adds the inset player boards, it adds loads more of all the cards, and a museum board, which is fine, but I don't feel like the game needed it. Check it out. Hope you liked this video. If you did, click like, subscribe and all that. Come and say hello to me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I Play Red. Thanks for watching. Bye.